this is Tara from MauiNow. So many of our local businesses have been going through a very hard time, and we wanted to give them a chance to share. And today we're here with Peter Merriman, chef and restaurateur of multiple restaurants across the islands. How are you today, Peter?
I'm good, Tara. Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you for being here. You've been a culinary pioneer for the past 25 years here on the islands. And I know I've spoken with some of other people in the industry, and they have shared that there's a likelihood that restaurants may not reopen. What do you think will happen across the industry?
It's absolutely true that some restaurants will not reopen. What the question is, what percentage of restaurants will not reopen? I was on a call with restaurateurs from across the country the other day, expert people of all different disciplines, and they felt it was somewhere between 20 and 80% of restaurants will not reopen.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, it's anybody's guess, and honestly, I think that here in Hawaii, it's going to be worse than most of the country because we're so dependent on tourism. And once tourism comes back, then we'll start to see life again. But we just don't understand how tourism is going to ramp up to come on the exit of this crisis.
And that was one of the questions I was going to ask you was, once government lockdowns are lifted, on what timeline do you project Hawaii tourism will return? Do you have any indicators from your business?
No. The one thing I do know is that we're fortunate in Hawaii that we have a spectrum of visitors, and the part of the spectrum that we're really going to like coming out of here is the wealthy, the high yield visitor, so to speak, because they will be the least impacted by this financial downturn, and they'll be able to afford to get here soonest. So I think that our high-end market will restore fairly rapidly, and then everything below it will probably take a little more time. Although I do believe that there'll be all sorts of different discounts encouraging people to come to Hawaii again, but we don't know exactly when that's going to happen.
Okay. And are your restaurants offering takeout, or did you choose to not go that route?
We tried takeout, but only for a few days. Really, for the model restaurants that we run, it made no sense at all because we're big restaurants, and just our utility bills are phenomenally expensive. So to try to cover those with to-go sales just didn't work.
Didn't make any sense. Okay. And when you think things come back and start to open back up, do you feel like it will be business as usual?
No, I think it's never going to go back to what we knew. I don't know where it's going to go. There's talk of social distancing inside of restaurants. That would be a death blow to us. I mean, restaurants operate on really thin margins. Our profit margins are just tiny. And, it's such a competitive industry. That's what makes that happen. And so if you take out most of our restaurants, if you take out even 10% of the seats, it's going to be a disaster, let alone they're talking about taking out 50% of the seats in your restaurants. So there's going to have to be a sea change. And it's too much of a change for me to be able to predict at this time what it's going to be. I like to tell people that we weren't really in the business of selling food or selling drinks. We're really in the business of selling experiences. And if you take half the people out of one of our restaurants, the experience is dramatically changed. Part of the experience is being in amongst all the other people. So we don't know exactly where this is going to go at all.
Okay. And as far as your biggest challenge right now, what would you say your biggest challenge is?
Well, I think there's a couple of challenges that are huge. We have debt. We carry debt. So we're heavily leveraged on all our restaurants. So how are we going to repay that debt? That's a really big thing. Another issue that almost no one's talking about is the fact that FICA taxes are still due on the PPP loans. So the PPP loans, as everybody knows, is money that's coming to small businesses. They give 75% of that money back to their employees in the form of wages, and the other 25% they're allowed to spend on utilities, on their landlord's rent, and on mortgage interest payments. None of that money is allowed to pay for FICA. So for me to get full wages for my employees, I have to go into my pocket to pay the FICA expense, which doesn't sound like much, but it adds up really quickly. And it's frustrating for us in that taxpayers seem to think that we're getting the money, and it's really the landlords and the insurance companies who can collect, and a little bit to the banks. The banks are they're in a jam too, because they can only take mortgage interest expenses this time. But I'd say I think it's really difficult for us to get our message out across the country. I've been working on this, writing a blog and so forth, because there's 13 million employees in the restaurant industry across the country. So, 13 million is quite a number. Right. And, people, they made such a big deal about the coal miners, and there's like 50,000 of those in the whole country. And even the airline industry only employs about 750,000 people. And they got a $29 billion grant to the airlines. And we got zero in the restaurants. And we have 13 billion employees. So it's really, I would say it's a really important challenge to help everybody understand what's actually going on. The government has turned us being small business owners into distribution systems to get money to employees, which I think is really good, because we want to get money to human beings, because they got to feed their kids and pay their rent and all that sort of stuff. And that'll start to prime the pump to get the economy going again. But in the meantime, we're stuck.
I appreciate you sharing all that. That is a lot, and I think writing a blog and getting the message out is very important at this time, as there hasn't been a lot talked about with the restaurants. I know I've been on another interview with Bev, who's trying to get some restaurant people together to advocate, but it seems like everyone working together to get the message out so people really know what's going on is only going to help. And when I have you on right now, is there anything in particular that you'd want to share specifically with the Maui community?
I don't know about the Maui community, but I think that what the nation needs to understand is there's a tremendous difference between a restaurant which is operating in a lesser capacity and one that's closed. And so if like I said earlier, is that the margins are so tight that if your business is down even 20%, you're hurting right now. But if you've got a drive-through window on your restaurant, then there's a chance that you're only down about 20% at this time. So those PPP loans are godsend to those folks, and God bless them. But they're not so godsend to those of us who are 100% closed. We have ongoing expenses, and we're closed by mandate of the government. So it's a really interesting situation to be in, where we're bearing the cost of things that are totally out of our control, which that's part of being an entrepreneur. You take risk and you deal with unknowns at all times. But to be in such a huge thing where you can't climb out of this hole, because it's too big of a hole and the sides are too steep, it's challenging. I don't feel any worse for myself than I feel for anybody else. The whole country is in a jam, and it's really bad. I actually feel really fortunate that I live in Maui, and if I've got to be stuck at home and self-quarantine, there's no place on earth I'd rather be than right where I am.
Well, I completely agree with you there.
Right?
We're gonna be stuck somewhere, and then to be able to be stuck in this beautiful place.
Yeah, right. I know. I was reading this morning about the billionaires who are flying off to New Zealand to hide. Go ahead. I'm gonna keep Maui.
Well, you have really helped the communities here, from being a pioneer in the farm to table movement, helping all the ranchers and the fishermen, and connect with the restaurants and the food you serve. So I know you've played a vital part, that it's all connected and affects all the different people with your restaurant being shut down. Anything further you want to share with us, Peter?
Well, I think our managers came up with an idea that we've taken and developed even further. When we were doing the takeout food initially, many of our customers would come up and buy $30 worth of food and leave a $200 tip. And
Mm,
our managers were doing all the work, so they didn't want to accept the tips. So what they did with the tip money was they went to the small farmers and then they bought produce to keep the farmers, so they'd have some
mm,
income going. And then we distributed out that produce to our employees. So we've
mm,
expanded that, and we give away until we can get all our people on either unemployment or on PPP loans. We give away food to our employees once a week, and we've given out just thousands and thousands of pounds of food. And
mm,
it's just been a great experience because the purveyors in Maui, Big Island, Kauai, Oahu, everywhere have all pitched in, given us incredible deals. They have things in their freezer. They say, hey, you can have this for free, or you can have it for a very affordable amount of money. So it's really been gratifying, heartwarming to watch how the people here in Hawaii are acting in a crisis.
mm-hmm. Well, I think that's the only thing that's going to get us through if we all take care of each other. Yeah.
Right.
Well, thank you, Peter, for coming on with us and sharing your struggles and, being willing to just speak openly about what's going on for you.
You're welcome, Tara, and thank you for having me. I'm honored to be asked for my opinion. Aloha.
Aloha.